Hi, Larry. It's great to see you. I mean, obviously, we would be at NAB today. I would probably be spending some time in your booth, hopefully moderating a panel with you on it and a couple of the broadcasters, but we aren't, so we're going to do this virtually. So it's great to see you. Obviously, we all wish we were in the desert.
We do.
How are you holding up, and how have you been keeping busy?
Holding up very well, actually. Lots of team meetings within our company, sorting out all sorts of things. And then happily, a lot of our customers who are temporarily unemployed, mobile truck folks, some of the sports people, broadcasters reaching out to us, and I believe to other companies, asking if we would give them technical seminars. And we have done, I think, 6 for the mobile production folks, many hundreds of technicians and engineers on different topics. We did them for Fox Sports. We will shortly be doing some reports to the networks who are cheated of seeing what would be new at NAB.
Right.
So it's keeping us happy.
That's great.
And then we got some seminars with SMPTE at the end of the month. So yeah, we're keeping busy.
So what are some of the core things that they're looking to learn about? And obviously the good news is I guess we have a little bit of time to do some proper learning and catch up with you.
Yeah, well, they reached out to us and they suggested the topics. One was the mobile production people were very interested in. Tell us a little more about how you got 2/3 inch from high definition to 4K. There had to be a story behind that. So we have a technical seminar on that. Others asked for an update on large format lenses and cameras. And then a third was on the famous subject of high dynamic range, HDR and wide color gamut. So there's the 3 we've done so far.
Right, that's great. Okay, well, let's roll through. I know we have some new products that are introduced. We read about a couple of them today, but let's roll through some of the new products and what you find exciting about these.
Okay, well, here's my agenda here. The broadcast, it's fairly modest, but one area pretty exciting, and then cinema, and then a little talk about some important firmware upgrades. Broadcast, we have a new lens, a portable 4K lens, and you notice those 4 funny letters at the end. That is because this lens we already have in our portfolio, but we're bringing in a sibling in where we've stripped out the range extender. And you'll see the model number is essentially the same except for the KASE means no extender.
Gotcha.
And what that allows us to do is to bring in a lower cost and, very important, lower weight. This lens is 3.7 pounds, and we think it's going to be desirable for houses of worship, universities, local TV stations, etc. But most important, the specs are very good. It's fast, f1.8, 7.6 to 137, flat f1.8, 3.7 pounds, and it does have the HDR capability and BT 2020. It does round out our seamless lineup of portable. Now we have 12 portables in 4K, 6 at the higher end, higher cost performance ratio, and then 6 at the bottom. And our total portfolio of 4K now is some 18 lenses. We think the most extensive in the world, but we have to check on that.
Sure. Now, so real quick, so how much does losing the extender knock the weight down?
It would take out about perhaps a third to a half of a pound.
Okay.
Third of a pound, gotcha. I would guess. Yeah.
Right.
There's usually a block of optics in those. There's multi-elements inside them.
Right. And it's key for that form factor. Obviously, people are looking for putting 4K cameras in, like you said, there for remote studios and remote locations. And
exactly.
Obviously, we're moving to a world where there will probably be more unmanned cameras that'll be controlled remotely from further away. So.
Indeed, we are.
Yep.
Indeed, we are. Now, this is interesting. At the time we were producing our second generation of 4K, those long zooms we brought out a year ago, our guys were working on another approach to zoom and focus controllers based on a lot of input worldwide from operators. So we have a new focus controller on the right there, you'll see, and the big thing about it has a display in it. And the new zoom controller has a display in it. And if you, these will work with all of our existing lenses, portable, box lenses, field, studio, 4K, HD, and our Cine servo lenses, the Super 35mm Cine servo lenses. And the whole thing, this was triggered in the world of 4K. People are very been hurt, if you will, by that increased sensitivity of the focus control. You don't have to move it very much, and you change the focus of 4K much more than HD or SD.
Right.
And that started a lot of thinking about what we might do about that. So what it allows you to do is to preset these controllers and tailor their operational capabilities to the specific nature of the shoot that you're doing. I'll give you 3 illustrations of multiple that are in there. And this one is what we call fine focus control. And this is where you take a wide range of optical focus, but you achieve it with, a short range of optical focus, but you achieve it with multiple turns of the knob. So now you've got that cinematic control over focus. And for operas, for example, you could do a facial close-up and do extremely precise focus.
Right.
And then a variant is a focus range limit, where again, the lens camera may be far away, you're looking at the stage, you're only going to do minor focus between the different people on the stage. But this time the operator says, no, I want to do this with just a small rotation of the focus knob. So you can tailor it for that. And then the other one is where in sports, where you might have quite a change in focus between 2 entities, like I show here, and that's done with quite a rotation. But some people say, well, I'm only going to go between those 2, so I'd like to do that with just a little turn of the knob. You can preset for that. And there are many other modes. And then the folks, sorry? Yes?
Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, I was going to ask what's on the display. So for the next, I think the next slide shows what's on the display.
It gives you, I have slides that show you what's in the display, but I didn't want to hit you with too many. Sorry. It actually gives you a little visual of the operational range and then the control range under it. And you see a pictorial representation of what's stretched, what's contracted in that. And the operators quickly learn how to work with that.
Right.
We put in curves that if you're towards infinity, subjects very far away, you can put a curve in where now you have a gradual control of focus around that subject at a distance. And if the subject is close to the lens, it would be the curve on the right where the gradual control is near the MOD, the minimum object distance. So this coupled with the zoom controller, which has a display and a bunch of switches and buttons like the focus controller, we preserve all that was in the former zoom controllers, the presets, shutter speed and all that sort of thing, but we add some things. And again, the display helps you set up all of these. The operators we've shown this to do love the display.
Sure.
And you can set in different zoom curves. You can reverse the thumb ring. Some operators like to push it forward, others like to push it back. There's just differences between operators. Now you can electronically switch that.
That's great.
So that's just a quick summary of something. We did some testing at the Met, would you believe, late last year with a mobile company that specializes in broadcast stage shows. And they really like this very, very much. All right, that's it in broadcast. Any questions?
No, that's great. I mean, as far as
move on to.
So as far as the 4K, the lens lineup, I mean, it's pretty robust, like you said, and there's a lot there. Are you feeling comfortable with that you're offering? I know in the call a couple weeks back you mentioned how you kind of really feel that you're in the zone as far as offering something for everything, every possible need. So do you see some more little spots that you say, oh, we should add a camera to do X, Y, and Z, or you feel pretty confident right now?
No, I think we feel pretty comfortable. My goodness, we have 122-to-1 zoom to help you in the field. We've got a tremendous reaction to that. We've 111 for someone who doesn't want to get that far. The studio, and then the lower cost 4K box lenses, and then that terrific selection in operational capabilities of some 12 portables. So I think we're very, very wide ranging in our capability.
Sure.
All right, cinema. This is where we have some very exciting stuff. In addition to our lens portfolio, a Cine Servo lens, a 10-to-1 zoom, 25mm to 50mm. I think you're aware of these that have been out there for a couple of years, including that sort of groundbreaking 20-to-1 zoom on the right. So we're slotting this one in the middle here, and it gives us a range, that 10-to-1 of about 25 to 250. That's a range that's well established in the cinema world. There are some 10 and 12-to-1 zoom lenses there that have it's called the suite range. So we said, all right, let's do one that has that range. And this is it. It has you for a zoom of a little more than 7:1 zoom of that 10:1 zoom range. You have a constant aperture from 25 out to 187. And then after that, it'll ramp down, but very gently to a 395. 11 blade iris, that gives you the better bokeh and handles of highlights. 4 feet close focus. The 3 20-pin connectors that give you broadcast zoom and focus, plus a output that can be used for virtual. And we can switch between EF and PL mounts. Now, here's what's important. It has a range extender, like that 20 by, and that will take you out to 375 millimeters. And you only lose 1 stop of light. So now you're operating T4.4 to T5. When you switch in the extender, this is a super 35 millimeter lens, but when you switch in the extender, you get the full frame coverage.
Right.
That's by virtue of just the intricacies of what's in that range extender. And it's like a 2-for-1 in the lens. If you can operate at a T4.4, you can have your full frame coverage. I mentioned the switching between EF and PL mounts. That's done at a service center. And here's some of the specs on the pitches of the various controls. There's the manual zoom, and then the drive for a servo zoom. The servo system, by the way, can be lifted off and removed. And now the cinematographer has the manual lens that they like. But for those who want to do shooting with all the digital precision and the speeds of zooms and that, the drive just clips on and there's no initiation. You just go straight to work. The drive is identical to that which is on the 17-120, that first Cine servo we brought out, except for one difference is that internal in the drive, the files are native to the lens. Those files are reported to the camera, so corrections can be made. They're native to the lens. Now, I mentioned that's 20 by zoom lens. That was a major breakthrough 4 years ago, where we responded to pleas from the wildlife and the documentary folks who were moving to large format. And they pleaded for longer focal range, but they also insisted on limitations to size and weight. And we did break a real barrier with this guy coming in at 14.5 pounds. When a 12-to-1 zoom is typically 27 pounds. So it was born of that technology in optomechanics that we now bring this new lens in the 10 by at 6.7 pounds. And if you look out there, the competitors that are 10-to-1 or 12-to-1, the lowest is 18 pounds. So this is, we think, is going to be very, very significant for television shooting.
Sure. All
right, now jumping to a new camera. A year ago, we introduced an EOS C500 Mark II. Now we're introducing a 300 Mark III. And if you look at it, it's physically identical to the C500 Mark II. And the only difference between the two is the image sensors. The body, the convertibility, the adapters we have, and then the modularity of the EUs that you can clip on to give you different, all that's the same. But this, the 500 is a full frame camera. This is a super 35 millimeter. And our strategy here was to recognize there are two constituencies out there worldwide. Super 35 is hugely established. Full frame is growing, but they're both going to be there. So we thought we'd give all the wonderful things that we put into the 500 Mark II into the super 35 millimeter world, with one plus, and that is we have a totally new sensor in the super 35. Come to that in a moment. I just give you a quick one slide overview of the differences between the two cameras. 5.9K on the 500, 4K in this super 35, new super 35 camera, but 4K raw up to 120 frames a second. And that's in that tiny little body without any of the adapters built into the little body, 4K 120 frame raw, or 4K XF AVC. And that's 10-bit 422 up to 120 frames per second. Or you can, if you put a super 16mm lens on, or a broadcast 2/3 inch lens with an adapter, will give you a crop 2K that goes up to 180 frames per second. And in the C100-300 Mark III, we give you XAVC intra, which is higher frame rates, every frame is there. Or if you want to really knock down your data and get longer storage, we'll give you the choice of long GOP. And we give you that in 4K and 2K. So very, very flexible in terms of the recording capabilities. Now I mentioned the sensor. It's called a DGO dual gain output sensor. And a simple explanation is when we entered the cinema market back in 2011 with the C300, we made a big point of saying every photo site of that 4K sensor has inside it 2 photodiodes. And back then, that was a strategy to give us extended dynamic range. Some years later, we said, hey, these 2 photodiodes also allow us to do some phase measurement, and that's where the famous dual pixel autofocus came from. Now we're saying, okay, the 2 photodiodes, we're going to have 2 gains, different gains there. And that will allow us to get an extended dynamic range. Very technical, I can't go into it right now because it'd take too long, but it's a thing of getting the 2, then blending them together, and you get an extension of dynamic range down into the shadows. We're now almost 16.5 stops. And we think that's going to be exciting to those folks in the movie making world and the episodic television who shoot a lot of moody, dark scenes with candlelight and all that sort of thing, right. Seeing more detail down in the dark areas.
So wait, so to get into that mode is just one button to get into that dual mode?
Actually, it's automatic. It works. You're in the mode until you pass 60 frames per second. Then it will revert to normal operation.
That's great.
So you get this enhanced mode at 4K, 2K, everything up to 60 frames per second. In fact, in the 2K, it goes higher. I think it goes to the 120 frames per second. But it's something I think is going to get a lot of attention.
Sure.
We have in this camera, like we do in the 500 Mark II, both HLG and PQ. You can select either, or you could select one of the Canon log curves. So you've got quite a choice in the HDR system that you elect to select. This is a picture of that new lens coupled to that new C300 Mark III. And I just want to draw your attention to, you know, how mobile it is. For a 10:1 zoom and that little unit there. It's this is a shoot we did for our demo video for NAB. We were out in the desert, and this guy, the various shooters that use it, they were amazed at the size, weight, and the capabilities. A point we were going to make at NAB was that more and more we are blending, if you will, our still photographic side with the cinema side. Our most recent higher end still cameras are just greatly empowered with video capabilities. I'm sure you read a lot about the EOS 1DX Mark III having 4K, etc. Now this EOS R5 that we've revealed a certain amount of information, there's more coming out, but that baby will record 8K RAW. Wow. And the one on the right, on the left, the EOS 1 Mark II with 5.5K RAW or 5K with HEVC, just amazing capabilities. So we think they're great B and C cameras that can work with full frame or with Super 35. And now you have quite a choice of B and C cameras to go with the A camera. So that's something you'll hear more from Canon about, this blending of the two worlds. A quick update on a new reference display, a 31-inch. It was new last year. We were going to show it for the first time at NAB, but it's remarkable in its specs that it's a 2000 nit, and that's peak white, full frame, full screen. Not your 10% white, it's full screen, 2000 nits with a black that's now down to 001. And that's a 2,000,000 to 1 contrast range. And this meets the Dolby Vision, the highest spec of Dolby Vision. So we were hoping to make quite a showing of that. We have a number of upgrades that we were going to announce on our other displays, our 17-inch and our 24, to enhance their HDR capability, both going down to 001 nits and the 17-inch going up to 600 nits, one of them to 1,000, and the 24 frames going, 24 guys going up to 1,000, 1,200. This is the product specs of this 31-inch. It's a 31-inch diagonal, 4 12G SDI inputs, so tremendous connectivity. And that summarizes that. So I wrap up with just some firmware upgrades we were going to announce. The XF705 that caused a stir more than a year ago when we brought it out, being given you 4K 422 10-bit up to 60 frames per second using the HEVC H.265 codec. And at that time, a lot of folks said, that's wonderful that we can get 60 frame 422 on an SD card, but the HEVC, that's challenging when we come to do our edits. You need some pretty powerful computers there. So there was a plea for, can you give us an additional choice? So we are giving them XFAVC. And that's shown here inside that red box there. We're adding that next month. All of those record capabilities in 24 frame, sorry, in all frame rates, but 4K, 2K, and we're adding in 1280 by 720p. So quite an addition to the capability of making this a very flexible. Now the 500 Mark II that I spoke about a number of times, it will have firmwares that will make it speak to the CN 10 by 25 in terms of the electronic corrections that can take place in the camera for these optical issues. We're adding XFAVC long GUP support, so you can get extended recording times. And then whether you're recording in RAW or XFAVC, we'll give you an XFAVC proxy support. The next one is a little odd, and it's a response to largely the House of Worship world, where they will shoot, the minister might be shot in 60p, but as soon as they put that stage show on, they like to push a button and then have it jump maybe to 24 frame or 30 frame to get a cinematic look. And in our case, you had to go into a menu to do that. And we got beaten up on that. So we said, all right, we're going to give it to you. So we're adding that into the C500 Mark II. And we're adding pre-recording. And also a request from folks who do very serious shooting. They want protection with double slot recording. We now have identical file names for both cards. So that's the addition in the red boxes there, the XFAVC long GUP and the proxy that we've added in to all that was there before in terms of RAW and the XFAVC. I'll wrap up by saying a very important thing we were going to show live at NAB was our systemization of the C500 Mark II for serious high-end television shooting in sports, where there is this growing demand for large format as well as the 2/3 inch. So we have built in a lot of the signaling interfaces, and now we couple with a multi-dyne adapter, and now we can go over the traditional SMT fiber to the base station and couple into the total system in a truck or studio or house of worship. And this shows the configuration. You can see it's very, very compact. And that's the multi-dyne on the back there, another shot there. And that's my story. Oh, no, and that one last little firmware upgrade, very important, for the C200 and 200B. The same support for that new Cine Servo, and pull down again that conversion to 24 and 30 because this camera is used a lot in churches. And then we're now giving simultaneous outputs on the SDI and the HDMI that weren't there before. And then some display improvements in terms of the way people like to look at color temperatures. The Kelvin scale or the millet scale that we heard pleas for.
So real quick,
Yeah.
obviously since you've been doing a lot of talking and presenting to folks in the sports world, and now you have all these amazing cameras and different types of sensors and full frames and Super 35s and all the options are there. You and I discussed this for years as far as it's amazing how far things have come as far as the flexibility
Yes,
and the choices. So what's your sense as you talk to people? Do they know where they want to be headed as far as the HDR land, the 1080p land, the 4K land, the 8K land? Are they kind of formulating opinions that are sort of in line with each other, or we're not going to have any holy wars, are we, like we used to back in the day?
No, I think we're at a stage now where I call it the uncertain transition. For example, our broadcasters are pretty unanimous. They're not going to leap into 4K delivery services anytime in the near future. I've been, listening to panels for the last 2 years on that topic, and the most recent I heard was at the HPA in February, where pretty well all the networks were represented, and a gentleman from NAB, and the topic was 4K or what, and unanimously it was 1080p with HDR and wide color gamut now. That's what we're interested in, and that is, of course, what Fox Sports did for the Super Bowl. So, and a lot of people don't know that the ITU, when they put out the standard for HDR, they squarely included 1080p /HDR /wide color gamut as a valid UHD format. So I think our broadcasters are saying, we're going to UHD, but we're going to do it for a first step with 1080p. There is a lot of experimenting going on with broadcasters. A lot of them are shooting 4K. They've got a couple of cameras at their various sporting events. They're learning about 4K, but they're not ready to jump in yet. Not at all.
I mean, a lot of it has to do with ATSC 3.0 and just sort of the inability.
Exactly.
Issue.
Yeah.
So as far as some of the stuff that you've seen, I don't know if you had a chance to see the Super Bowl at all in that production, but what's your sense of when you look at the image quality out there in sports? What's impressing you? What is your take? I wish we had the Olympics this year. It would be amazing, but
yes,
do it next year.
Indeed. Well, you can see the progress. Certainly, I've had a lot of contact with the folks at, we have had a lot, Rich and the whole team, with the CBS and NBC and ABC and Fox Sports, with all of their experiments in HDR and wide color gamut. NBC, Fox, CBS have done very extensive work, and it's been, they will tell you what a learning curve it is, and it ain't over yet. They're still trying to master how to do the duality of the SDR and make sure they put out the best SDR, because that's the majority of their viewers, while they do fulfill the promise of the HDR. And the learning curve has been terrific. They seem to have settled unanimously on HLG because it's that much easier to get it through an infrastructure. And I think, and they're excited by it. They like what they're seeing. Once they overcome the traps, and they'll talk for hours on that. Right.
Yeah, it seems that it's refreshing. I was talking to Dolby earlier today, that there is a lot of, they like it. First of all, they want to get to HDR, but they seem to be moving in the same direction, which is great. You don't have this sort of, we're going this way, we're going that way, 720p, 1080i.
Exactly.
Kind of avoid a lot of these kind of annoying things.
And the ITU have done a very fine job. They put out 2 publications now, which you can get online, and that is their collected operational experiences of HDR and wide color gamut from European broadcasters, US broadcasters, and they're very good documents. Not an awful lot of people know about them, but they're well worth reading, because they do explain a lot of things and point out some of the steps that you need to take care of.
Right. Great. Well, thanks, Larry, for your time. Really appreciate it, as always.
My pleasure.
Stay healthy and safe and properly quarantined. You're of a certain age. I always joke that people are saying, everybody around your age, if you will. And
yes, indeed. We're the fragile ones.
Misbehaving ones. Yeah, but a lot of you are misbehaving from what I hear. My friends are talking to their parents, saying, Mom, Dad, you got to stay in the house. You can't go out. So behave yourself.
Yes, we get a little bit of that.
Right, exactly. Well, great to see you as always.
And you. Thank you for your time.